Today in Radio Chatter, it's the legendary Alice Cooper. We talk about the advice he gave Rob Zombie upon his split with White Zombie, what legendary drummer plays on the brand new Paranormal CD. We talk about Hollywood vampires, the recent Rockstar deaths, and why it's something he just doesn't understand. Oh yeah, and that Andy Warhol painting he rediscovered, which is worth millions of dollars. Yeah, we talk about that too.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
This is Radio Chatter with WRIF's own Meltdown.
Thank you so much for checking out the Radio Chatter podcast. Back at it today with the legendary one and only Alice Cooper. This is about my fourth or fifth time I've had a chance to talk to Alice. And man, it's great. I could talk to Alice for hours, but they give you like 15 or 20 minutes or something like that. And normally my interviews take place between like noon and 2 p.m. or thereabouts before I go on the air in Detroit at 3 o'clock on WRIF. But this time they're like, hey, can you come in and talk to Alice at 10:15? Yes. Where do I sign up? Then they changed it to 9:45, and finally they sent me an email, said the times were screwed up. How could you do it at 9:40? And I'm like, yeah, sure, absolutely. Sign me up. So they called a couple minutes late, and no big deal. So I start the interview, and all of a sudden, Alice's phone goes on the fritz. It's your job to see if you can find out where that happened. I've told you guys before, I don't really edit up these interviews. I do sometimes just to make them sound better, but I try to keep everything intact as far as the interview so you can check out the whole flow and everything about it. But let's see how good you guys are. Anyways, I did bring up Rob Zombie because I remember an interview I did a couple years back with Rob, who's a big fan and a friend of Alice Cooper's. And I asked him about his relationship with Alice Cooper. And here's what it sounded like.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny. It's this weird thing I've done several times. You know, when you're a fan of somebody, you listen to their music, you see their interviews, you see them on TV, and you sort of form this idea in your mind of who they are. And I did that with Alice, because, you know, everything from the Hollywood Squares to the Muppet Shows,
right.
had the record. And then when I met him, he was very much exactly like I thought he would be. So there was no, almost like you think you already know him. Because sometimes you think I meet him and go, wow, that guy's nothing like I thought.
Right.
But no, Alice was just like he comes across. He's super nice. He's really smart. He's really funny. He's super cool. And, you know, we hit it off right away. And, you know, we've been friends now for almost 20 years.
What's the greatest single piece of advice he ever gave you? Did he ever give you any advice?
No, we never really talked about that. The only time we ever had any kind of discussions like that was when White Zombie was ending or had ended or was falling apart. You know, who do you talk to about that? I called Alice and we were just talking about it. He's like, hey, same thing happened with my band. Right before Welcome to My Nightmare, we had some sort of conversation. I don't remember exactly what was said, but we had sort of a conversation about that.
Alice divulges a little bit more as far as what advice he gave to Rob coming up in the interview today. So it's pretty cool and actually really good, solid advice. In the meantime, I was connected with the one and only Alice Cooper today on Radio Chatter.
How you guys doing? What's happening to our Tigers?
Well, that's a question for somebody who I think with a higher pay grade than mine. I'm not sure.
Wow. I know. I just live and die with the Tigers and the Lions, so, you know.
Yeah, I hear you there. I know you're a big baseball fan and football fan and stuff like that. What about hockey? A big hockey guy or what?
Oh, yeah, Red Wings. My dad used to take me, you know, when I was like 7 or 8 years old to see Gordie Howe, Ted Lindsay, and all those guys play. And I didn't really understand, you know, what I was seeing. But I was seeing the greatest players in the world, you know, of all time.
Yeah. Have you been to Joe Louis Arena with the statues and stuff since they built those?
You know, I haven't been there since, well, the last times we played outdoor venues there in Detroit. You know, but we used to stay at the Pontchartrain and, you know, and play all those venues every Halloween. That was sort of our annual Halloween deal.
I was just telling somebody about this when I was a kid growing up in Western New York. I watched one of your shows. It was on MTV, and it was, I think, from 1984 at Cobo Hall or whatever. It was a Halloween show. And I think I wore out the videotape in the part where you cut your head off. I had to figure out how you did that, and I wore the tape out.
Well, you know, I do it every night still on this show, and it is probably not for everybody, only because of the fact that it's a 40-pound blade that misses me by about 6 inches every night.
Yeah.
And the closer the blade comes to you, the better it looks on stage.
Of course.
So, I mean, don't try this at home, okay?
Yeah, no doubt. Is there ever been like a stage prop that's been like, this has gone way off the deep end, we can't do this? You ever do anything like that?
Yeah. The deal is that you have those Spinal Tap moments, when you're trying to use props on stage, and every once in a while the greatest idea doesn't work out, and then a mistake that happens on stage is something the audience reacts to. So you say, keep that mistake in, okay? You spend thousands of dollars on a prop, and a simple mistake is what works.
A Spinal Tap moment turns legendary. I see. All right. Well, there you go. Hey, well, listen, you got the new record coming out this coming Friday. You got the tour with Deep Purple. By the way, I met your guitar player, Rockin' the Range, Anita Strauss. She's awesome.
Oh, Anita's great. She's, I saw her play, and I was looking for a guitar player that was a shredder, somebody that could really, really, really play in that style. I already had two great rock guitar players, but I needed a shredder, and she filled the bill every night on stage. She kills the audience every night on stage. Yeah,
she's great. I also saw you recently on Hired Gun. I watched that movie in the theaters a couple weeks back, and of course, you're no stranger to hiring hired guns. How does somebody go about getting into the Alice Cooper band? Do you have to find out about them or hear about them, or do you take auditions, or how does that work?
Yeah, you do take auditions, but at the same time, we kind of all know who everybody is until there's somebody new that comes along, and then you kind of say, "Hey, I just discovered somebody here. I just found this person." And then but you know who all the gunslingers are out there. And between guys like Ozzy and myself that are lead singers, a guitar player might go off and do his own career. Then you say, "Okay, I got to go find somebody new." And there's 40 guys out there that are amazing. I always surround myself with the best players, but I surround myself with people that I like, because you're going to be on the road with these people for a year.
Right.
And everybody in this band that I'm in right now are best friends. And that makes touring so easy. And it's like that with the Hollywood Vampires, too. With Johnny Depp and Joe Perry and myself and Duff McKagan and all these guys, everybody's best friends. So there's no ego being thrown around at all. Everybody's just, okay, sure, sounds like a good thing. You never hear an argument. All you hear is laughing backstage.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the Hollywood Vampires, because that tour wrapped up. What was that experience like? Because you've kind of done your own thing for your whole career, and now all of a sudden you're in a band with some legendary players.
The great thing was, it was like we billed ourselves as the world's most expensive bar band. Because, everybody starts out in a bar. I mean, playing everybody else's material for 4 hours a night, that's how a band gets good. Every single band I know that's a good band started that way, from the Beatles to the Stones to everybody. Johnny Depp was in a bar band way before he was an actor.
Right, I heard about that, yeah.
And he was a great guitar player. In fact, Joe Perry takes guitar lessons from Johnny.
Is that right?
That's how good Johnny is, yeah. So, I mean, that's really the deal, is like there was never any hassle. We picked songs for all of our dead drunk friends. That was the whole idea of the album.
Right.
Was we drank with Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and John Lennon and Keith Moon and T-Rex and all these guys. I said, so let's put a band together and kind of honor the memory of all of our dead drunk friends. And, immediately it filled up. I mean, people like Paul McCartney were dropping in to do songs, and, David Grohl, and, everybody wanted to be on that album. And the album just turned out great.
Yeah, the
next album will be all original material.
Oh, really? Okay. Do you have a timeline for that, or?
Well, I know we're all on tour next year. We're going to be on tour next year because Johnny's doing 5 movies this year, so he can have some time off next year to tour. He'd rather tour than make movies. I can tell you that right now.
I'm sure. It looks like he had a blast.
Oh, and he's the nicest guy in the world. He spends as much time as he can with the fans. I mean, if somebody wants to talk to him, he'll spend an hour with them. He's not one of those guys that fluffs anybody off, And Joe Perry, of course, man, he came up on stage with us in Barcelona the other night and just killed it. I've never heard him play as good as he's playing right now. So, I mean, hey, you know, what a pleasure it is to go out with these guys on tour and just have fun.
Now, speaking of the rock stars that have passed on too early, you fought your own battles and stuff, and lately, you know, with Chris Cornell and now Chester Bennington. What kind of advice would you give some of these guys? And have you met some of these guys?
Yeah, I knew. I worked with Chris Cornell. I wrote a couple songs with Chris, you know, for the Last Temptation album.
All right.
And I just went, this guy has got the whole package. I've never seen anybody that had the package as much as he did when it comes to just talent, guitar playing, singing, songwriting, charisma, the whole thing. So I was unbelievably shocked by that one. I didn't get that one. I didn't understand that one at all. You know, a suicide on that level, I went, I just, why? I'm like everybody else going, why? And then Chester Bennington, same thing. Chester's one of those guys I played golf with. I was teaching him golf. And, you know, we talk about music the whole time, and he was in two bands at the same time, Linkin Park and I think STP he was in. And great kids, great family, you know, no financial problems, and then all of a sudden he's dead. And you go, why? What is going on? You know, I don't get it at all. I really don't get it. I've never had any kind of depression, so I can't speak for that. You know, I don't think it was drugs. I don't think it was any of that. I think it was just a matter of maybe clinical depression.
Yeah, it's tough when those guys leave so soon. I mean, they had such great careers. Still, both of them still very relevant in the music business and everything.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you couldn't find two people with more potential than those two guys, you know. And it was kind of the same thing with Scott Weiland, you know. I mean, that guy had the whole package also, and yet, you know, decided that heroin was more important than that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but I don't really think their thing was a drug problem. I think it was more of a physical problem. I think it had something to do with the clinical depression.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears out of there. Now, recently, of course, you made news finding this Andy Warhol. It's like some sort of like antique roadshow, you know, master find treasure. You know, explain how that happens.
Well, you know, I lived in New York at the time, and I knew all the Warhol people. I knew Andy and all the guys, and I used to see him every night at Max's Kansas City or Studio 54 or Hippopotamus or one of those clubs. And I noticed that he did an electric chair. And I was using the electric chair in my show at the time.
Right.
And I just went, well, I'm going to buy that one. So I bought it. I bought it for, I forget what I paid for it, but it was a couple, $3,000-$4,000, I thought, something like that, you know. And I had it in my apartment in New York. And then when I moved to Arizona, you know, I wrapped everything up, put it in tubes, and totally forgot about it. And maybe 30 years later, I'm talking to Dennis Hopper. And Dennis goes, you know, I collect Warhols. So I said, oh, really? I got one of those, I think. He said, well, what do you have? And I said, the electric chair. And he says, you know, it's probably worth a lot of money. And I said, really? I said, it's in my garage or something. It's sitting in my garage for 30 years, wrapped up in a, you know, and I find out that all of a sudden now it's worth all this money. And I just went, that's unbelievable, you know.
Well, you got your retirement plan all worked out for you.
Yeah, that's you know, at least I'll buy a nice car, you know.
Hey, a couple more things. I know I'm running out of time here, but I wanted to touch base on just a couple things here real fast. Of course, the record, which I'll get to here in a second. But I remember talking to Rob Zombie one time, and he said that I said, what was the best advice Alice ever gave you? And he said something about when he was leaving White Zombie to go solo, and you kind of did the same thing. Do you remember that conversation at all?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I said, if you're going to do this, you know, don't do it quietly. Don't do anything small. So if you're going to do it all out. You know, in other words, make your show bigger than White Zombie's show. I had to do the same thing with Alice Cooper Band. You know, it's like when we quit, Billion Dollar Babies was the biggest show of all time out there. And I'm thinking, well, Welcome to My Nightmare's got to be bigger than that. So you can't just creep into it. You've got to go out all the way, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's good advice, yeah. All right, final thing for you here, Alice. You got the new record coming out, Paranormal, is set to hit stores this, and, you know, whatever, internet and the whole thing on this coming Friday. So tell us about this record, because this isn't your normal, everyday, run-of-the-mill 12 songs and the whole thing. What tell us all about this album here.
Well, when you write 12 songs, and I didn't really want to write a concept album this time, and then I listened back to it and I realized I'd accidentally written a concept album. Every single character in this was either paranormal or abnormal in some way, and I couldn't think of a title, and I went, well, paranormal actually is what I'm looking for. That's really what sums everybody up. And when we put the record together, we said, let's do something unique. Nobody would expect. Well, Larry Mullins Jr., from U2 on drums, was a great idea. Only because he doesn't play drums like your normal rock drummer. He'll go to hi-hat tom-tom rather than hi-hat snare, and it changes the whole bottom of the record. It changes, even though it rocks as hard as anything, but it sounds differently. It just has a different sound to it. And I've never had a drummer ever come to me and say, let me see the lyrics.
Oh, really?
I went, what? Why would a drummer want to see the lyrics? He says, that's how I interpret U2's songs. I listen to the lyrics first, and then I write the drum parts. And I just went, this is going to be great. He's a guy that actually cares about the lyrics.
And you were working with the original band, too?
Original band, the great thing about the original band was when we broke up, we didn't break up with any bad blood. Mm-hmm. No, there was no divorce. It wasn't a divorce as much as it was a separation. And we stayed in touch with each other all the time. So this time I said, okay, one guy's been on this record, one guy's been on that record. I always call them up. I said, why don't we put all four guys that are remaining in the studio together? I want to do these two songs live in the studio because you guys play great live together. And I don't want to overdub anything. I just want it to be live the way that you guys play. And it turned out unbelievable. The guys still play exactly the way they did in 1972, 73, 74, So it really turned out great. I was very, very happy to work with those guys again.
Is it true that they still get residuals from you for just the use of the name Alice Cooper?
Well, what it is we were in the golden age of rock and roll when you sold records.
Right.
And we put just about everybody's name on every. It didn't matter who wrote it. We kind of added everybody, not all the time, but on the big records we did. And so everybody would make residuals 30 years, 40 years past the record. Because those records just keep selling. A catalog does, and everybody gets royalty checks. So everybody was making money for 30 years on our original songs, and I think that was great. That's the way it should be. If you start out as a band together, then everybody should share in that.
I hear you. Well, listen, Alice, good luck on the record. Paranormal drops this coming Friday. Of course, you got the tour with Deep Purple starting up, and we'll see you here in Detroit on September 3rd. And thanks so much for the time.
Hey, okay, and somebody light a fire under our tigers, okay?
I'll send that message along to the bullpen, especially.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Alice. Thanks, man.
Okay.
I guess when your time is up, your time is up. There you go, Alice Cooper on Radio Chatter today. And yeah, they get him off the phone pretty quick to move on to his next interview. But yeah, they gave me 15 minutes, and they spent 3 of it trying to reconnect him after their phone line went on the fritz. I don't know. Anyway, it's really cool to talk to Alice Cooper. Such an honor and such a privilege. I mean, I've been a huge fan since I was a kid. I mean, the Ballad of Dwight Fry, Welcome to My Nightmare. 18, School's Out. I mean, all the classics, of course. By the way, today, July 25th, 2017, as I record this, is the anniversary of Trash, which came out on July 25th of 1989, which was kind of a record that reinvigorated Alice's career with, songs like, Poison and different things like that. I mean, just some great stuff on that record. House of Fire, Bed of Nails, and if I'm not mistaken, that was the one with Kane Roberts. He was on that record. I remember I was working at a radio station, probably my first radio gig, and where I was sitting at nighttime, I could see the business line ring on the phone right next to me. And one night, I was there and saw the business line ringing. It was like 8 o'clock or something. Business offices were closed. And I picked it up. Hey, it's Kane Roberts. Thanks for playing our song, or whatever it was. I can't remember. I think I talked to him for about, 15, 20 minutes. He's just talking to some guy running the board at the radio station. He couldn't have been nicer. If you don't know who Kane Roberts is, Google him. He looks like Rambo up on stage. Had the big guns, had these, machine gun-shaped guitars. I think he even, wore the bandana around his head, just kind of like a Rambo type thing. But, that was back in the day with Alice. Of course, now he's got, Nita Strauss, great on guitar. She did the national anthem at Rock on the Range back in mid-May, and that's where I met her for the first time a couple months back. Anyways, thank you guys so much for checking out Radio Chatter. We'll do it again real soon, this week. Like I said in a previous podcast, I've still got the guys from Spread Eagle, Rob and Ray. We're going to get those guys on coming up here in a few. I talked with Tommy Shaw from Styx. I got to tell you, I'm not the biggest Styx fan. I like Styx just fine. Got nothing against them. This new record, The Mission's pretty kick-ass. And I got to admit, you put it on in a great sounding stereo, man, this thing is really cool. So we'll talk with Tommy Shaw about that coming up here and tons more. Subscribe, give us a rating, give us a review, punch me up on social media, Meltdown WRIF, and go back and check out some of my past podcasts with the likes of Chris Jericho, James Hetfield, Dave Mustaine, Robert Trujillo. I mean, just some great podcasts I've had in the last year and a half since we really started doing this. Thanks so much for checking out Radio Chatter.